Hey, and we're live. Welcome to the show, everybody. I just got a notice as we went live that this streaming setup that we're using, Hangouts for YouTube Live, is going away on August 1st, it says.
Yeah, I've been getting those the past few times we've done Fans of Power and Capes and Commentaries. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious. It's like what is it? It's like Google Hangouts it's merging into something else that's still similar to the same things. I don't know what's going to change.
Yeah, well, what they're doing, they made Duo, and Duo is a face-to-face chat program, basically. And so it's like replacing Hangouts for regular users. So like if I want to chat with you in a video window, I would call you on Duo on my phone or whatever so we could chat. But Hangouts is only going to remain as like a productivity tool. So people who have like the business suite, they can still use it to like talk to other people. But because it's going away, you can no longer use it for YouTube Live. And Duo isn't made to do YouTube Live. It's just made to do basically Android to Android Skype calls, basically video calls. So as far as I know, they are getting rid of the multi-camera live streaming thing that we've been using for all of our podcasts here on Pop Culture Network for like the last 5 or 6 years.
So what you're telling me is I'm going to have to find something that works around not breaking Joe's duct tape setup.
Yeah, well, between Tyler's old phone and Joe's RCA tablet from Big Lots, yeah, you're going to have to find something that works with all that stuff. And honestly, at this point right now, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Because like here on my computer, I can run OBS, I can run, you know, whatever. There's like tons of software that I can put on a computer that the computer can run.
Yep.
But it works computer to computer, not necessarily with an Android phone and a cheap $60 tablet. So
all the shows are coming to an end.
It's the end of an era.
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be something, right? There's got to be.
Well, I just assumed that they were going to kind of work it in a way that you would still be able to do something in some form somehow.
Oh, they're still doing something. It's through your webcam. You can go to youtube.com/webcam and your webcam will still live stream. But how you get
other people
your webcam, right, and Joe's and Tyler's into one video, or even to do this show, you and me, that's different.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, so that's something I'm gonna have to look into later today.
Yeah, I think because it was like hard enough trying to like get them to figure this out. So,
right, I know. Trust me. Yeah. So maybe all the shows will be going to Facebook Live. I don't know. We'll have to see how that goes.
Well, I thought Facebook Live could only hold 2 people.
Can it?
I don't know. I haven't messed with it. That'll be fun. And I don't like the idea of like using my own personal profile to go live with and having other people that, because to me, there's like a difference between people that you're friends with in the real world and people that you're friends with through doing the shows. I don't know.
Well, because there's that whole like never meet your heroes thing, right? It's like people may like the show, but they may not want to read what I have to say about other stuff that's going on in the world. You know,
exactly. And to me, that's the way it sort of needs to be, almost, because you do sort of open yourself up for that. And someone's like, "I really like that guy," and then all it takes is one post or something. They're like, "Oh,
yeah," or one weird fetish that they make reference of, and you're like, "That dude is weird. I am not checking that dude out anymore."
He said something about putting sweet tarts up his butt. I don't know. That's kind of weird.
Actually, yeah.
Anyway, Speaking of sweethearts up your butt, wrestling.
Yeah. So this is going to be the most feature lacking episode we've ever done. This is going to have the least amount of structure. This is I even put a note, I think it was on the YouTube description, like it's basically going to be two guys bitching, because this is going to be very little of like recaps and necessarily covering stuff that's happening in shows, and just kind of shaking our heads at like, what the hell is wrong with this industry? And it's funny because just yesterday, I think it was, I got one of those surveys from WWE because I'm on their survey team, whatever. And, it asked 50 different questions about, are you watching more? Are you watching less? Since you're watching less, why are you watching less? And how do you get your information? And like all this different stuff. And so we'll talk about some of that also. But as far as, what we had done with this show, of course, was the road to WrestleMania. And then after WrestleMania, we were like, well, after the pay-per-views, then we'll come back and do a show. And then WWE did Stomping Ground, and we both just messaged each other, and we were like, no. Like, there's no reason to do a show talking about that show. So then we had Fyter Fest this weekend, so at least there was something positive there that we can talk about.
I was like, let's hold off. We got that AEW show coming up. That'll at least give us something to talk about, because if it's one thing for us to sit here and be like, it's terrible, WWE's terrible, it's just the same thing week in, week out. You're starting to really notice it now in attendance figures. Like Stomping Grounds only did like 3,500 people paid, and that arena sits way more than 3,500 people. So
that's like an Impact show. I mean, that was when Impact used to tour and travel around. Now the difference is WWE, of course, gives out tickets, and people will show up with the free tickets, so they can go to all the local radio stations and give each radio station 100 tickets.
Oh yeah, trust me. Like you hear the advertisements all the time when they come to town.
Right. So between your hard rock stations and your classic rock stations and your country stations and your rap stations, you're going to get another 3,000 people that will show up with the free tickets that you're handing out there. So it's not as empty as arena as you would see on when Impact used to do those live traveling shows. But I mean, that's still, if you think about it, they're going to an arena. Now, some of these are a little smaller. Maybe they're 9,000 seat instead of going to a 20,000 seat arena or a 35,000 seat arena. But if you go to a 9,000 seat arena and you only sell 3,000 seats, that's pretty terrible.
And I mean, that's just the downswing of the whole thing. Like, people are finally dropping off because it just seems that Vince doesn't care anymore. But are you
looking up the Stomping Grounds arena?
I was, yeah.
Well, go ahead. Well, if you want to look for that, the reason why I bring that up actually is because my wife and I had this conversation during Fyter Fest. We're watching that one, and it, like, I said on Facebook, I think it was, I made some comment that whoever is in charge of the video production, the actual like design on camera production of that show deserves a raise. They are fantastic, because that looked, first of all, that looked like a WWE show, right? I mean, those shows that AEW is putting on, they look like big time shows. They don't look like Major League Wrestling. They don't look like ROH. They don't look like Dragon's Gate. Not that there's anything wrong with those shows, but those shows look small and they look lower budget. This looked like a WWE show, production quality wise. But the other thing was, they were in I think it was they were in a 9,000 seat arena. And so that's as big as it was a 9,000 seat arena, which is tiny compared to some of the other arenas that you see WWE run in. But it looked, the way they had it lit, the way they had it laid out, the way they had the cameras placed, it looked like a full arena.
It probably was mostly full. I just looked up
but my point is, like, it's not when Impact went and they ran in they would do the Family Arena in St. Louis, and that's only like a 6,000 seat arena, and it would still only be like a third full. So they would only do camera angles from one side, because as soon as they tried to switch like a shoulder camera following a guy over the top rope, you could see like, whoa, that whole side of the arena is empty, AEW, they were in a smaller arena, but it didn't look small. The way it was lit, the way they had the lights on the crowd, the way they had it, they had like blue light shining on them, and it would fade into darkness. I mean, it looked like you were in a giant 30,000 seat arena. It did not look small because they know what they're doing, putting this on television.
That was also the same arena where Hogan was revealed to be the third man for the NWO, by the way.
No, because that was Bash at the Beach.
Oh, I'm saying it's the same arena. It was the Daytona. Let's see.
Wait, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's right, because they weren't doing those outside yet.
They never did. No, you're thinking about Road Wild.
No, because they did. Wasn't it Bash? Because weren't they doing Bash at the Beach they'd give like all the free tickets to the college kids who were drunk on spring break?
Oh no, that was those were the Nitros. They did those at
they never did that for the pay-per-view?
Club La Vila or whatever.
They never did that on the pay-per-view. I was thinking they did that at the Bash at the Beach pay-per-views too.
Nope.
All right. See, I'm getting old and everything's kind of blurring together.
Yeah, the Ocean Center. It's where Hogan turned heel.
Okay. All right.
But the Tacoma Dome holds 23,000 people. So to sell 3,500 tickets, it showed an attendance there roughly about 6,000. So I do the math. Did you happen to see any of those pictures?
Wait. Okay, I thought you were saying that Stomping Ground was at the same arena also.
No. I'm talking about Fyter Fest.
All right. Okay, so yeah, I was mixing up a bunch of different stuff in my head. Here's the funny thing also is that I was watching, I forget what it was, but I forget how bad some of those it was Halloween Havoc. I forget how bad some of those entrances were for WCW.
Well, which one did you watch?
Halloween Havoc, it was just like a big jack-o'-lantern.
Oh yeah, the inflatable pumpkin that they did for
that's
98, 99. Yeah,
there's nothing else there, and it's like that looks so cheesy. I mean, granted, at the time that was like, oh wow, no one's ever done these big things, whatever. But it was just so bizarre to look at, how far it's gotten and now how far it's contracted back. But yeah, Bash at the Beach. I guess in my mind, I always thought at some point those were live. Like outside because they always had the palm trees and the sand. And in my brain, I think that's an outdoor scene, even though now that I think back, obviously that was just a stage in the arena. It's not like in your house was actually outside the front door of somebody's house.
That would have been better, probably.
Said, yeah. But yeah, I mean, when you watch Fyter Fest, it looks like it's a 30,000 seat arena. Like it doesn't look like a tiny arena. They do a good job of putting that on television. So they're already at the point where even if they're running smaller arenas, it looks just as good as WWE television because you can't tell that they're in a tiny spot. It looks clean. It looks sharp. It looks full. It looks good on TV. You don't see that, hey, they're only running with, half the crowd or a third.
It genuinely reminded me of a WCW show, like production-wise. I'm like, this looks, it looks familiar, but it still looks fresh. How about that? I'm waiting for him to actually have like the little box on the apron to have the camera guy up there too, because I always love those camera shots in the corner.
Okay, wait, here's the question. So WCW versus WWE. Did you like the elevated stage that WCW could never make up their mind if they were going to keep or not?
Are you talking about like
the walkway? Like when they
early on where they would have the one that connected to the ring?
Right. So they would walk out, and then instead of going down a ramp and across the floor and then up steps into the ring, they would just have that walkway.
I always dug it. I know ECW did that a time or two as well. I always enjoyed that.
It was weird because WCW would do it and then not do it and then do it and not do it. They'd bring it back for a while, then get rid of it for a while. It was just bizarre.
Well, I think that's kind of what we need, right? Like we've all just been fed WWE for the last 18 years.
Yeah.
And getting just the same production style. Like every Monday Night Raw, it's like crowd shot, pan back, here's where we are. Same thing, like all the time. And yes, the entrance ways have changed and evolved, but it's mostly just stayed that same way. So why not? I would be all for him bringing a ramp that connects to the ring.
I have to admit, even though it was so just absolute cheese, I loved on Impact when they had an entrance on this side and an entrance on this side. So the two guys would come out from different sides.
Yeah, you got the heel tunnel and the face tunnel.
Yeah,
well, I mean, AEW kind of has that back too. So
kind of, although it doesn't seem to be consistent on who's coming out of which tunnel at which time. So
yeah, I'm honestly not a big fan of the tunnel idea. I would rather them just have a different elaborate entranceway and just have them come out that way.
And well, they're trying something different. We'll let them try.
Yeah. I hope that doesn't end up transitioning to TV, because to me that gives me too much of a TNA, like early TNA vibe. And that's what I don't want them to be. I don't think they will. That's what they've had set in their minds. It's like, we're not just going to take every guy that gets released, but you never know.
But that's also like the TNA, their original set when they first started doing the shows from was it Nashville Fairgrounds, whatever.
Yep.
In my mind, that was always like they took the Thunder set and painted it orange and then just kind of stretched it out. And that's what they were coming out to in the early days. And so any change from that was always a step up from being the Orange Thunder set. So.
Well, I'll ask you this with Fyter Fest. It was definitely a play on the Fire Festival that crashed and burned. Did you kind of enjoy the fact that they had like those tents and everything out there and were gradually like taking all of that away? Or do you think that's too much and kind of over the heads of anyone else that's like, well, what is this?
Well, no, I think it worked in the sense that they're obviously going with a different crowd than the WWE crowd. And the crowd that they're aiming for and they're pulling in is, I want to say, a smarter crowd. And I don't mean smarter necessarily like with wrestling being smarks or anything like that. But what I am saying is that they are trying to reach, instead of a general audience WWE 6 to 65 crowd, they're going for the 18 to 35 crowd. And so trying to get people who are more tied into pop culture, they're a little more up on the relevant stuff. So it's less about kind of this general attitude WWE has where, you know, if a movie is huge, then 6 months after the movie, you know, leaves theaters, then WWE puts references into their show, right? They always have this problem. Whereas AEW,
I thought Vince had to actually watch the movie first, and according to internet rumor, he's about 20 years behind on everything.
Well, that's also part of the problem, but it does lend itself to, you see that as an ongoing trend in WWE, where these references pop up, but it's like way too late, and it's never like, you know, Game of Thrones had a finale, so you would expect like the Viking experience or whatever they're called now to come out and have like dragon eggs or be sitting on thrones that look like Game of Thrones stuff, or you know what I mean, something like that. And WWE would never do anything like that because they're so far behind.
It's like Triple H and his Fury Road entrance that was about
Mad Max,
about 5 years too late.
Yeah. So like the one thing I didn't like about, like, I understood what they were doing with the whole Fyter Fest thing, but what I didn't like about it was they wanted to do a storyline where they lost their gear and Kenny Omega had to come in and find them. You know, he's like, I've got a new person to make his gear, so they could come out with this show specific gear that they wanted to show off. So they had this storyline about how the band bailed and the luggage got lost and they didn't have money for models, so they brought out mannequins and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. But it only played into that match.
Like if you haven't watched the documentary on Fyter Fest or know anything about what happened, it's just kind of over your head.
And it wasn't for the benefit of anyone. It didn't.
Yeah.
play into
right.
anything else other than the fact that,
They thought it was funny. Let's put it on
John
TV.
Moxley and Kenny Omega got to fight in some of it later on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was a neat idea, and I thought it was okay from the standpoint, like, okay, use the reference, that's fine, but then you've got to embrace it more with some of the stuff that's going on and have it somehow cause problems with something else other than the fact that just you want to wear video game gear because the guy who runs an esports company is wrestling in a match in the mid card of the show. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So
I don't think, to me, that seemed more, I guess, of a one-off show. I kind of see that being like one of those like Road Wild WCWS. It'll happen every year, and they'll kind of be silly with it in some terms, just because it does kind of coincide, like partner up with the video game deal, which I think also Jim Ross didn't understand either. He was like, "Huh, okay, sure." But I think,
and a lot of people. Well, and here's the other thing: is that a lot of people, a lot of the feedback I got, they didn't understand who this guy was, and they didn't understand why he was wrestling in a match, because he comes out, he's obviously not a wrestler. Like he looks like a total dad bod kind of guy. They don't understand what's going on, and they liked who was his opponent, the Japanese guy.
Oh, Michael Nakazawa.
Yeah, and people in the crowd liked him, and they were, popping for the stuff he was doing. They liked having a match with him, but a lot of people who I talked to commenting on Facebook or tweeting or whatever, they were like, why is this guy here? Like, why is he in a match? This doesn't make any sense. And they saw CEO on the barricades, so they knew it was like a sponsor, but then this guy comes out and he is CEO, and they're like, is he so rich, like he bought the company, or he bought, like, how does this work? They, it just didn't make sense to some people. So they should have done, and this may be a production thing they need to work on, but if you're not watching the promos on YouTube, if you're not following their channel, then you do kind of miss some of the stuff that's going on. If you just tune in to watch the show in a vacuum, which a lot of people did, especially this one because it was free,
right?
Then for them, they're like, why is this guy here? How is this coming together? And you get like a quick mention that they had a match before, but he cuts a promo saying that the CEO guy cheated on him. And so they get an idea that there's some sort of story there, but they really just don't understand. There's no video packages. Commentary is not giving you the history why the guys are coming down to the ring. And I think that was part of a failure of it, that's something they need to think about more and work on more going forward. Because for some people, this was the first AEW thing at all that they've seen. They didn't see Double or Nothing because it was $50, $60, whatever on pay-per-view. This one was free. Here was your chance to really, show all these people. And they had a decent show. I mean, it was an excellent show. It wasn't as good as Double or Nothing, I don't think, but it was still a really good show. But there were just certain aspects of it that they really needed to think more about, the fact that this is the opportunity to grab people, and they kind of missed it on a few things.
Yeah, I my hope is that once they go to a weekly show, that even if people aren't tuning over to what they're doing on Being the Elite on YouTube, that they really need to take pieces of that and implement it into TV to give people a better idea. If they want to do something like the lead up to Fyter Fest and how it blends in with that, make people understand that better. I'm just trying to think in my head, should we at least recap Fyter Fest? Because you and I at least watched that. There's no sense in going over Stomping Ground, because the only thing of note really that happened on that show was Ricochet won the United States title. And now I'm like, then what? They just always seem to forget about the United States champion, like over and over and over again. Because
it's no longer a stepping stone to bigger and better things.
No, it's just some sort of weird placeholder that will. Oh yeah, you got the belt. Well, I guess we got to put you on TV after like 3 weeks, but they're actually treating Ricochet like a star. So we'll see how that goes.
For now, we'll see. Yeah. Actually, let's talk first WWE real quick. Like I said, I got one of their surveys. I'm on their fan whatever thing, and so every, I don't know, 6 weeks or something like that, they send out these surveys. So the survey basically starts with, are you watching more or less than you used to? And I was like, less, way less. And they wanted to know reasons why. And part of, and it was like, choose all that apply. And one of the options was, I just don't have 5 hours a week to give to wrestling anymore, which I checked it off, and it's kind of true, but it's more like, I don't want to give them 5 hours. You know what I mean? It's like, there was a time when it was WCW, ECW, and WWF all at the same time, and I was watching all the shows, plus their online shows, plus their syndicated shows, plus, you know, whatever it was.
Wait, so you were watching Saturday Night WCW Pro and watching Roadblock take on some jobber? You were watching all that?
WCW. Okay, here's something not a lot of people ever experienced, but WCW in, I want to say it was early 2000. They released a CD. Oh, I hear your dogs. They released a CD. It was a promotional CD that you would get at like the checkout at like Best Buy, I think, Radio Shack, places like that. And it was, I forget what it was called, but you got this CD-ROM, you put it in your computer, it would start up, it would connect to their server, and every week they had, I think, 2 or 3 matches from the power plant that they would show streaming on your computer.
I never knew anything about this.
All right, now here's and you're thinking, okay, well, you get to watch some footage, some up-and-coming guys, that's cool, but this was on a CD-ROM, which means it was part of Time Warner Media's push, not just a WCW thing, whatever. So part of this whole push thing that they were doing, the arena that they were in was actually green screened around the ring, and they put in CGI 3D models of like this futuristic battle arena, and it was like blue steel, and there was wire mesh and these giant spikes, and there'd be flames, and a guy would get thrown out of the ring, and you know, he's just falling out to the mats, but it looks like it's a metal you know, diamond plate floor, and instead of there being, you know, a barricade there, it like would drop off into a pit, or it would drop off into spikes, or, you know, whatever. And so the guy would get thrown out, and then he'd kind of look back and be like, oh my gosh, and climb back up in the ring, whatever. And seriously, this was like, for, I want to say 3 or 4 months that this was a thing that you could watch these matches.
Does footage of this exist anywhere?
I cannot find it, and for the life of me, I can't remember what it was called. And I've asked a couple people about it, and they can't remember what it was either. And a couple of them are like, I remember hearing about it, but I never actually watched it.
This is the first time I have ever heard of this.
Yeah,
that sounds crazy, and part of me thinks that it was just a fever dream for you that you had for half a year.
It's possible, but no, and I can't, and from what I remember, I don't think I paid anything for it, right? I think it was free, and it was just power plant guys. I don't think it was actual, you know, it wasn't, it may have been like Lash LaRue versus, you know, Johnny Smith from the power plant. Like maybe there was like a C-list guy who wrestled one of the dudes, you know, every so often, but
that doesn't sound like a good time though. Maybe that's why they had all the CG effects.
But I used to watch that. So I was watching the Saturday shows. I was watching the syndicated Sunday shows. I was watching everything on Monday. I was watching everything on Thursday. I was watching, you know, like at the time, SmackDown was, we didn't have like a UPN station, so it was on like midnights on Saturday from the WB station that we had,
yeah,
stuff like that. So And I would track all that stuff down, and I would watch all that stuff. Nowadays, 2019, I had to think for a minute what year this was. 2019. It's like I don't even want to watch 3 hours of Raw. Like, it's just gotten to the point where I watch Major League Wrestling every week. It's an hour, it's packed, and it's full of matches I enjoy.
I still need to watch MLW.
It's not worth it to me to watch 3 hours of Raw to get a half hour of entertainment out of it.
Well, that might be changing, Dirt. Because
I've seen some of these updates. So anyway, okay, so that was one of the things. 5 hours is just too much time. One of the other things was I can get all the information I need from another podcast or YouTube channel or whatever. I forget how it was phrased, but I clicked that one because honestly, most of the time I'm not watching Raw or SmackDown. I'm just watching whatever's on YouTube where they take a clip from the Wrestling Observer podcast, or I'm watching Cultaholic, or I'm watching whatculture.com, or some of those things to get, the wrestling news and the latest recaps of stuff, because it's better for me to watch 15 minutes on YouTube as opposed to watching the 2 or 3 hours of WWE programming. And they wanted to know, like, are you following WWE on Instagram? Do you get the emails? Do you follow them on Twitter? This or that or whatever. And I was like, no, none of those. I'm not. I don't care anymore. And then the final one was, there was a box for other, and it was just like, I don't care about the storylines anymore. Like, I just don't care about this stuff. So then a couple questions later, they asked, do you feel like the storylines in WWE are too predictable? The results are too easy to understand, or the problem is you don't know what's happening on Monday Night Raw ahead of time to get excited about it. And it's like, I just don't care. Like, that's my answer. I just don't care. Like, the stuff, anything that you're doing with these storylines, I don't care anymore. Characters.
Well, who wants to see handsome Baron Corbin against whoever for the 28th time in a row?
Baron Corbin is going to be the next big thing. Vince believes that Baron Corbin is the next, I guess, Drew McIntyre, which whatever that's going to get you.
But Drew McIntyre's there now, so that.
But so I was like, I just don't care. So then the next question, instead of following up on what you're actually answering, the next question where their mindset went was, what information can we give you by email or Instagram or Twitter that would get you to tune in? So they think the problem is that people don't know what's going to happen on the show, so they need to tweet and Instagram and email more about the matches that are going to be happening on the show. They think that's the problem. Like, you just don't know what's going to happen.
Send it out to Dirt that Paul Heyman will be the executive director of Raw. That'll get him watching.
That's not the problem, WWE. Like, that is not. And so they ask, do you need to get an email update anytime a legend is going to appear on the show? Do you want to get an update anytime a huge marquee match is going to be happening?
Do they have any of those left?
I don't know. But late breaking news about matches signed during the show. They want to know if that's going to get you to tune in. And it's like no. Like, fundamentally, the problem is where they're at right now. Dolph Ziggler should have been a 4 to 6 time WWE World Universal Champion who legitimately walks into the arena and people assume he's going to walk out with the title. And they've done the 50-50 booking for so long. Guys like Cesaro, guys like Sheamus, that's the generation of people that should be pushed on top right now. And they buried that whole generation of talent. So you either have to bring someone new in who's big, like Brock, and put him up there, or you have to start over with a guy you're bringing in now and build him up to that point. But that whole group in the middle there is just completely destroyed. Nobody.
Or you just rely on people from the Attitude Era.
Yeah, well, Yeah, and Undertaker returned last night, I heard.
Yeah. Why are we having a match where Undertaker is gonna tag team with Roman Reigns to take on Shane and Drew McIntyre? Like, why?
Because Roman Reigns, they need to get him over.
I mean, at least Taker will be in a tag match because man, the match with him and Goldberg was
not good.
But no, you're right. They have went this way for so long and haven't taken the time to develop anyone and make people care about any of those guys. And then they wonder why when they start to push them, why no one cares. It's like, well, you guys did this. Like, if I watch Cesaro constantly lose and then win on occasion and then have Paul Heyman as a manager, and then drops him as a manager, and then it's like tag team guy, and then why should I care about him when you've made me think this entire time like he can't get it done?
There's no coming back from where most of these guys are. I mean, the only thing they could do with a bunch of these guys is to take them off TV for a year, bring them back with a stripped down gimmick. You know, I've been gone for a year. I've been fighting. I've been training. I've been focused. And then they have to go on a win streak for like a year. And then they start to look like a real threat, you know?
Well,
I mean, what WWE is going to do.
Well, I mean, even then, too, like, take someone like Braun Strowman, for example. They pushed him undefeated. He's a monster, blah, blah, blah. And then anytime that he began to sniff the main event or have a title shot or win Money in the Bank or whatever, they always found a way to just keep him from that. Like, when he was white hot, he should have taken the title off of Brock Lesnar, and they didn't do it. For reasons, I don't know why. Like, I don't know why they think that Brock has to constantly be there. Like, he's just there collecting the check. These guys want to be there every week. These guys, for the most part, like wrestling. So you can see the transition in Jon Moxley from Dean Ambrose to John. Like, he actually looks like he's having fun now, even when he's getting dumped into thumbtacks and getting hit with whatever. But you can just see that world of difference, and you see the news reports that there are talents, a lot of talents that are unhappy. Whether that's completely true or not, we don't know. But at least now there's a legitimate place that they can write out their contract, feel around, hey, does AEW want me, Ring of Honor want me, whatever. They have other places to go now. They're not just confined to the chains of WWE.
All right, so I just want to throw this out. I didn't think to open the chat window on YouTube until right now. Delvis78 is in the chat. He's been talking the entire time. And I'm just sorry, I forgot to open the window. So seeing all your comments now. Yeah, he doesn't want sweet tarts up his butt either. So that's a thing.
I mean, well, someone probably does, not us though.
One thing that he says here that actually is a good idea, he says bring back the stables and have some gang wars. And that is actually something Major League Wrestling...
Whatever it takes to get Savio Vega back on my TV screen.
But Major League Wrestling does have has several stables, and that's something you see a lot more in the independent side, is the guys travel together, and when they book themselves at shows, they try to book everybody in the group, you know, so they can all go, and you know you're working with people, you know, whatever. So stables is a much bigger thing on the indie side, and that has translated into Major League Wrestling. So you do see groups in there like Contra. You see groups like MJF and all his rich guys. You've got the Von Erichs. You've got you know, all these groups coming through there. So that is something that works with them. And that played a lot actually into their show that they just had on Friday. That is something that is lacking in WWE, because one of the things, like last time when we did a show, I was talking about Bradshaw, the Acolytes, and how they beat up Public Enemy. And that match only came about because Public Enemy was going to be having a match with the Brood on Raw. So the Acolytes were basically on Sunday Night Heat to weaken Public Enemy before their fight with the Brood on Raw. So you had a tag team in a feud with a tag team, but this tag team was aligned with this tag team, so this tag team stepped in to fight that tag team to weaken them before the match between those two. That's the type of stuff that used to always happen in wrestling. That's like the basic wrestling booking. Like that's the type of stuff that classic wrestling is built upon. And all of that is gone really in WWE. The closest thing you get is when they were doing stuff with like the Shield, and it's like, well, you have to have a match with Seth before you can have a match with Roman. A couple months ago, it's like I get it, whatever, but that's not the same as when you have like these big groups going against these other groups, because then you really feel like they're fighting for that power, within the company. That adds something much more to the intrigue than just, I saw you backstage and you looked at my suitcase as I was coming into the arena, so I'm going to punch you in the face. And then that's a 6-month feud in WWE.
Don't give them ideas.
We had Jericho spilling hot coffee on Kane led to a
yeah, I always hated that. Or you got this shampoo commercial and I didn't. Let's have a match at WrestleMania.
Yeah. And Delvis even brings up New Day is the closest thing they have to a stable on WWE. And he's asking about managers. What happened to managers and valets? And that's a good point, because again, Major League Wrestling has managers and valets. And in fact, they've done a storyline where one of the valets has taken over the show. She's worked her way into taking over the production of the show. So now like the intro is different because she's Latino. So she has more Latino music and there's words in Spanish in there. And she gets in front of the camera a lot more. And now it really feels like this valet has, worked her way into taking over the company.
Yeah, I don't know why there aren't managers
for
and
a long
valets
time,
as much.
Yeah, there was a push to have the guys learn to cut their own promos, which was fine because some guys can do it. John Cena doesn't need someone to talk for him. He can talk. The problem is they wanted to script all of them. And the problem is you write these scripts for John Cena and they're terrible and he just reads them. And he does exactly what he's told to do because he's a company man. Someone else, like Dean Ambrose, they would write a script for, and he would say, okay, I'm supposed to have a fight with whoever, and he'd throw it away, and he'd do his own thing, and they'd get mad at him. You didn't follow the script. But what he did was 100 times better than anything they had written. So WWE they lost that idea of, if you have a guy who's weak on talking, you bring someone to talk for him. That was my job. When the years that I have done wrestling, I've been a manager. My job was they would put me with someone who didn't speak well, or they wanted to build a stable and a group and they wanted a mouthpiece for the group. And so I would go out there and I would talk on behalf of them because they weren't that good at it, or, again, because it was a big group thing going on. And that's something that WWE when they got away from that and wanted their performers to be a little bit of everything, they lost track of why they did that, because they want all of their wrestlers now to be actors. They want them all to do, the Marine 6 and See No Evil 4 and, make those appearances on Good Omens and, whatever, because then they're more incorporated with the rest of entertainment. And I don't care. Like, I'm not going to watch that stuff.
Right.
Because there's a wrestler in it. I don't care, but that's what they're doing to try to bring in more of a mass audience, which, I mean, if it was working and they had huge ratings, great, go for it. But again, we've seen that generation of them doing that, and none of those guys mean anything. And so it's time to get away from that. It doesn't work. Strip it back down and start over. And for me, even visually, things that they do on Raw and SmackDown now, where the sets are just these plain TV screens with LED lights. There's no personality to them anymore. Raw always had like this kind of industrial metal look. SmackDown always had kind of like this breaking glass. It was like a cool blue, look to it. Now they're just big screens, and they don't even play the footage from the match on the big Titantron anymore because their production guy thinks it's too distracting. So they just put the logo up there while the match is going on. Whereas that's something like seeing it on the screen kind of adds to the fact, like, this is the big deal. This is what you need to focus on. There it is. And having pay-per-views where part of the draw of watching a pay-per-view was, what is it going to look like? What is the set going to be? Even if it's Halloween Havoc and it's just a giant inflatable pumpkin, it's still like, you're still kind of, part of the anticipation is, I want to see what this thing looks like when the guys come out there. So they've just lost a lot of the small things that really added up to big things in building anticipation, making things look special, making guys look like a bigger deal than they were. And they're just floating on this idea that if we have them doing Kelly and Strahan in the morning or whatever the show is, they did an interview there, so now more people are going to be watching Raw because they did that interview. It's like, no, that's not a crossover audience. People watching, the third hour of the Today Show are not the people who are going to be tuning in to watch 3 hours of Monday Night Raw. So I'm hoping that this idea of bringing in Bischoff and Heyman can do something, because those roles apparently are much more production oriented than just being the faces of the shows. Like, those guys are actually legitimately being brought in to be on creative, to have ideas, to push certain guys, to bring in certain storylines, to change certain aspects of the show. So maybe that can help get them on the right track to go somewhere. But
at the same time, at the end of the day, it is Vince's show. He is the one that makes the final call. So for the life of me, I don't know why Heyman accepted to do it, because he has always, anytime creatively in a role in the company, has always clashed with Vince, and it reaches a boiling point and he ends up quitting from it. So we'll see how it goes. I looked through the results of Raw and it looked like there were way more matches, which works, but I guess maybe that falls into Vince doesn't want any wrestling during commercial breaks anymore. So I guess they're going to have more matches just based off of that. But you could see the influence of Heyman on the show,
right. And I will say, I looked at the recaps from last night's show, and I might actually check out the 90-minute version on Hulu later. I'm not watching the 3-hour version. There's no way, but I might watch through the 90-minute Hulu version. And there were some things, like, it didn't open with a 20-minute promo. It opened with a match.
Yeah.
And the match was a street fight, and they blew out part of the Titantron. Went through the LEDs and did this big spectacle thing to start off the show, which is not something that they would normally do. It's not something that they would have done under what they've been doing for the last 5 years. So maybe that is the Heyman effect. Maybe he came in and said, all right, let's do something big, get people interested in talking about it. So we'll see. Maybe that was something interesting. But again, stop having Shane wrestle. Stop bringing back The Undertaker every 6 months because ratings are terrible and you think that's what's going to turn it around. WWE is going to have this big problem. They've got a quarterly earnings call that I think has to happen in the next 14 days. And so they're going to have to go out. There's no WrestleMania in this one. They can't, argue about the NBA playoffs on a lot of this stuff. They're going to have to sit there and say, okay, we have a real fundamental problem, and this is what we're doing to try to fix it. And if they don't have something good to tell, then their stock is going to start tanking.
Then Vince will be like, this is Heyman's fault. Bishop, you're out of here. Get out.
We'll see what happens. But yeah, so that's WWE right now. Like, I honestly, it would almost, to me, it would, with having Heyman and Bischoff there, what they really need to do, if they want to get people interested, if they really want to get people talking, they want people to tune in and do the show, they should open Monday Night Raw next Monday, and it's the old ECW entrance, Paul Heyman with the giant headphones coming out and the black trench coat, and do a show ECW style. And when you go to SmackDown, it's Tuesday or Friday Nitro. Or no, I guess they're on Tuesdays now, right? They haven't switched.
It just turns out that Heyman and Bischoff just played the long game for the Monday
Right,
night.
exactly. So you've got an ECW show and a WCW show.
With the idea that you gave with Heyman right there, because their next show is Extreme Rules, it would be kind of cool if he came out and he's like, all right, I know Extreme Rules is blah, 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 but screw all that. Tonight it's going to get extreme. And then, that'd be all right. I don't know so much about like just branding it ECW or something, because I feel like that would probably I would probably roll my eyes at that, because I'm like, we need to let that go.
But not just brand it ECW. I mean, legitimately, that video wall that they have is gone.
Yeah.
Have the fake brick wall with the smoke machines, with the little disco light on the top, with the black curtain, with the chain link fence, steps going down to the black mats on the floor to the ring. Like, legit do ECW arena.
I think like do that style and then just be like, this is Raw is War. And then have that old theme play again. Like that, you know which one I'm talking about, right?
The one where they scream and you can't understand the words?
Yeah.
It's like Yeah. So legitimately like tear it down and present it as something brand new, as some sort of shake up or mix up or takeover or whatever that shakes it to the fundamental core, because then you've got interest. Like there's something interesting going on here, as opposed to just, hey, here's Paul Heyman, he's now the general manager of Raw. Like, okay.
Well, their plan's not really to make them like on-screen characters, is it? I thought it was strictly just behind-the-scene creative stuff.
It is, but you can use that so much as a creative focal point, at least to kickstart it. They can always kickstart it that way and then kind of fade to the background as things move forward, as the talent, steps out. And there's even, you could do the simple thing of having a faction around the guys who are in charge, and then the WWE faithful, the loyal ones who stand up and fight against them. And I'm not saying it's a new NWO or anything like that, but I'm just saying, going back to this idea even that we were talking about earlier of having stables and groups in these, gang war styles fights, shake it all up, break it all down, present it as something new, and then have WWE fighting back, have them be the underdog, fighting back for, the life of their shows. That's something that's a lot more interesting than anything they're doing right now.
So would it just be like a collective of, we're Paul Heyman guys?
Pretty much. I mean, it's either, well, you'd have a lot of heels. You'd have guys who maybe are known for their extreme stuff, and then you have guys that he can just buy off. He's like, here, I wrote him a check. Now they're part of my stable. That type of thing. You can also do some storylines where tag teams split up and one gets on each side, and it's more like one was jealous of the other. Marty Jannetty, Shawn Michaels thing. You can, pull off that kind of stuff. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. When you do something big like that, there's a lot of parts that you can move around, that you can shift in order to make new, exciting things happen, with these characters and with the stuff. Like you could split Cesaro and Sheamus. You can rebrand them in different ways and then have them clash back at each other. And it's going to be way more interesting than having them work as a tag team against everybody else.
Well, I think where Sheamus is out, they've kind of just had Cesaro doing his own thing anyway, with like new music and new attire. So they're kind of halfway there, I suppose.
Yeah. But, that's just an example, but the idea is you can break apart teams. You can build new teams. When you do a big shakeup like that, where it's visually different, the music is different, the way you would have the talent interact with each other is different. It allows you to just change so many things so quickly that people are like, wow, I really got to tune in and follow what's going on, because there's a lot of stuff happening, and that's really, like, WWE has to do something drastic like that, because everything that they've been doing for so long just doesn't work, and they've done it for so long that they've just destroyed everything. They've just killed everything. So many people watch, who I talk to, that's like, do you still watch Raw? They go, well, yeah. And I go, well, how much of the show do you actually watch? They're like, well, I turn it on and it's there, but I'm on my phone, or I'm surfing on the internet, or I'm playing a game on my laptop while the TV's on in the corner. So it's there, it's on, but they aren't really watching it, And it's like so many people are just watching because of momentum. It's like that's what they've always done. So that's, what they're doing. For 25 years, 26 years, Monday night has been a night for wrestling. So they just watch wrestling on Monday night. It doesn't really matter what else is on. But they're not really watching it anymore. And so few people, here's another big thing. So the guy who I used to work for that owns the comic toy video game store, he has had so much WWE product traded in over the last 6 months. He said it's not even funny anymore. He's like, at first I was like, well, that's cool because this stuff sells. And then more gets traded in. He's like, well, there's some nice stuff in here. And then now, like, people who were the hardcore collectors, people who bought like the Hell in the Cell ring in the box, unopened, that's been sitting on their shelf for 8 years, 9 years, whatever, they're trading that stuff in now that they've been holding on to forever. There's, pieces signed by Hulk Hogan where they bought like the replica belt and they went to, whatever restaurant he's running on Palm Beach or whatever, and he signed it. People are trading that stuff in. Like, it's just like WWE has just fallen so much that even those hardcore fans who have been wrestling fans for so long are just kind of like, I don't watch anymore. Maybe I've grown up and, moved past it. Maybe it's just time for something different. And I'm like, that's how I am. Like, I don't even watch, as we've been talking about, I don't even watch the WWE stuff anymore. And it's weird because I still consider myself a fan. And I still, like, if I'm walking out somewhere and I went to a toy store in St. Louis and they had an old WWF, kids belt from the, early 90s, late 80s, whatever. And I was like, yeah, I'll take that. That's cool. A piece, but I wouldn't walk into a store and buy a figure of anybody.
No.
10 years ago, I'd be like, oh, I like that guy. Cool. I'll buy that figure, put it on my shelf. I got rid of most of the toys I had. My son got rid of all the stuff he had. He would rather have Super Mario Odyssey on the Switch than have all the wrestling toys. So he went and traded them all in. He just doesn't care anymore. He doesn't want to watch. And as far as I'm concerned, if I get tickets to a live show, I'll go check out the live show, but I'm not buying tickets to a show in St. Louis or Chicago or Indianapolis and making the drive anymore. It's just not worth it to go see the TV tapings. If they do a house show, I'm more interested in seeing a house show here in my hometown than going to a TV taping.
Yeah, because I want
they can play around.
Yeah, at least they can do what they want to do. There's so many. Like, I still consider myself a fan as well. Like, when I'm watching Fyter Fest, like, I feel something different. I'm like, yes, all right, professional wrestling. This is what I wanted. Something exciting. The guys can actually go out there and do what they want to do. They're not bound to scripted promos. They just do their thing and they have fun, and the crowd can eat it up. If they go out there and they mess up, fine, they mess up. You don't have to walk on eggshells.
Yeah. Delvis actually just said in the chat room he found a WWF Raw wrestling ring toy on the side of the road. Like, someone just chucked it out the car as they were driving.
That's it. I'm done.
Screw WWE. I'm done with this thing. Oh, that's hilarious. And totally believable. 100% believable.
Yeah. But I hope that with Heyman and Bischoff in control and Vince actually lets them do what they want to try to do, I have hopes because they're both two very creative guys. I mean, obviously, Vince pulled a lot from ECW during the Attitude Era, and, people still look at Bischoff as like, hey, that's the guy that had Vince down for the count for a while. And I guess that's sort of what we need, because back then, WCW was beating them up so bad, like, Vince had to change something to survive. Now it's a little different because you have your stocks, you have your Saudi blood money, and everything pouring in, and financially you can just run off of that for a while, and that's kind of what we've seen. But with AEW coming up, like, they need that creative shot in the arm, like that kick in the ass to be like, all right, we need to bring these guys that we lost, all these fans, everyone in the universe that is gone, we have to bring them back in. And hopefully they can do that. When I saw the news, I was like, that right there is how you can tell how bad it is. How they finally recognized, all right, we probably should do something different. And hopefully they will. We'll see how that goes. I'm curious about SmackDown with Bischoff, because it's like, all right, is Hogan going to come back and win the belt?
Maybe will come in to start doing creative.
And what does that do for, like, the writing team? Are they still going to keep most of the writing team around, or is this going to kind of break down more into, like, here's Heyman, here's Bischoff, and here's their little group that they each have?
I would assume that the writing team would be relatively unchanged, and most of that is because those guys, WWE for 20 years, when they've hired writers, they've wanted writers who are more about, they can write TV production scripts as opposed to guys who do wrestling storylines. And I don't think that's going to change, because they want format sheets that look like television format sheets as opposed to just an outline of a show that everybody...
Stop being ashamed that your wrestling company is a wrestling company.
They're a sports entertainment company.
Oh yeah, forgot.
All right.
Can we talk about AEW now?
Yes, actually, I was just going to say, let's switch over to AEW because I was getting tired of this. So, although I warned people there'd be a lot of bitching on this show. So, anyway, but Delvis, just one last thing. Delvis 78, it would be great to get Joey Styles back as a commentator. That's what he wants.
If he would want to do it, that would be refreshing.
What is Joey Styles doing today?
Does
he still work for the company in some?
I don't know. I know that he was involved with the website for a while. Let's check and see.
Let's see, Joey.
Yeah, no, he worked.
Started selling digital advertising with WWE. Is now selling digital advertising full time.
Huh. No, it's 2016. It was reported that Styles was released and returned to advertising sales in New York City. So,
working for the Yes Network.
Maybe.
Oh, he took part in Evolve last year, apparently.
Evolve's
okay. Event.
Oh yeah, he did call one show. The only thing with Joey Styles is
but then he got fired because he made an inappropriate comment.
Yeah, he puts his foot in his mouth a lot, especially on Twitter. So that's probably why he hadn't been back. Maybe they're just like, let's stay away from him.
I don't know. Maybe he's just gotten bitter in his old age.
Yeah.
All right. So AEW Fighter Fest. They did have the pre-show,
which I didn't watch, but I heard was not good at all.
It was not the best. We'll get into that in a second. Although I will say, they had a YouTube feed that was live, getting ready for the pre-show. And so and the idea was you could watch the pre-show live on YouTube, but then you had to switch to the Bleacher Report Live, BR Live app in order to watch the actual show, because they want people to sign up for the app, download it, get used to it, because then next time there's a pay-per-view, it's much easier for you to go in and click that you're going to get it. Plus, they're going to be doing more AEW shows on Bleacher Report Live, as well as on TV in the future. So they set up this YouTube channel, and I checked in maybe about half hour before it was actually supposed to start, just to see, because it said it was broadcasting, and it was the color bars and just that high-pitched whine sound, that standby beep type of thing going on. 5,000 people were watching that. We're just watching the color bars and listening to that sound. So then I left, but I still had the thumbnail sitting there, so it would update every so often. Finally, the logo popped up. So I went back to it for the logo. They had the logo up, but they were doing the live audio feed from the arena. And I don't think it was supposed to be the live audio feed, because you could hear people chit-chatting. You could hear people kind of mumbling and walking around, and then you heard like the commentator, or not commentator, the ring announcer with Justin Roberts.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, everybody, welcome to the show. You know, are we excited? Woo! You know, whatever, doing that kind of stuff. And then after a few minutes, it went silent, but it was still showing the logo. 12,000 people were watching at that point. And that was like maybe 5-10 minutes before it actually went live. And so then it actually went live on YouTube. But then you could also switch over to Bleacher Report, to the BR Live app, and you could watch it on there as well. So so I just turned on the app and watched through there, because I'm not going to switch back and forth right as the show starts trying to follow it. But
right.
But I just thought it was kind of funny that they had 5,000 people watching the color bars, and then as soon as it switched to the logo, suddenly 12,000 people were tuning in. Like,
that's a good sign. That's a really good sign.
That is good. So, all right. So the first,
I wish we could have that many people watching the Transitional Champion podcast.
Well, maybe we need more production snafus. I mean, we had them last episode.
Yeah.
Anyway, the first match was triple threat tag match: Best Friends versus SoCal Uncensored versus Private Party. This was a match. Kazarian was in this, so I was interested to watch this because I've always liked Kazarian. This is one of those matches that started out slow, but then it picked up, and then once it picked up, it like kept going. Like, this was a good. It didn't just start out, you know, with a lot of energy, which I think maybe threw some people off. It started out with a lot of slow, technical mat wrestling, by the numbers, move for move, and then they started diving, and then they started doing the big hits, and then they started doing top turnbuckle, and then that's when, like, it really started getting everybody into it and getting them all excited and getting them all pumped up. So the match, I think some people, again, they were like, what? Their initial look at this is like, why is this is just a regular, like, who cares? You know, but then it took a while. Once it got going, it got going. And then they did, at the end of the match, they did this Dark Order appearance. These are the guys, the lights turn off and it turns back on, and there's a bunch of guys standing around the ring wearing matching lucha masks.
Yep.
Look like little black and green minions. And then the lights turn off and they all disappear. And it's like, okay, it's kind of interesting, but still, we don't know what the heck is going on with this Dark Order and what any of this means. Let's see. They showed the stuff backstage with the Elite, how they've all lost their gear, and Kenny Omega's telling the Young Bucks, like, hey, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. I've got somebody who can make us new gear for tonight. It'll be great. But then, of course, because he's spending money on making new suits, it took money away from the production stuff, and that led to other stuff later. This part, the next part, though, I think was where they lost a lot of people, and then the next match lost some more people, because the next one was the Librarians.
Yeah.
And they had the Librarian came out shushing, and you could hear a second shushing because there's actually two Librarians.
Yeah.
Because two indie wrestlers had the same gimmick idea, so now they have them working together on the show. So she's shushing.
Well, the way that it worked was, I think it was the Young Bucks liked one, and what's her name? Levy Bates or whatever. Someone else liked her, so they're like, "Oh, we'll just make them both a Librarian." And that's basically how that came.
Peter Avalon is the other guy.
Yeah.
So then they open the tent, and he's inside the tent shushing people. Of course, they both have a book in their hand because you're a librarian. You have to have books, but the books don't mean anything. They're just books. Like when you go to the grocery store and they have the big bin of hardcover books for like $3 or $5 or whatever. And it's all basically the stuff that's on the clearance at the front of Barnes and Noble type stuff. They just have random books in their hand, just some random novel. It's not like if you're going to do that, if that's your gimmick, then you should take like Lord of the Books instead of Lord of the Rings. You know what I mean? Or do something where you're taking something people are going to recognize and turning it into the librarian joke to have with you. But then the book should also be part of the gimmick. You should be hitting people with the book. Or you open the book and the pages have been cut out and there's a brick inside. You know, something like that. They're not doing any of that. It's just like, hey, look, I'm carrying a book because I'm a librarian person and I have glasses on. That's their thing. So anyway, they go out to the ring, and then Allie, however you say it, basically Bailey without the B comes out. Same gimmick, same style, smiling, jumping around, laughing at the crowd, whatever, super excited to be there. I'm not the biggest fan of Bailey, so I'm not the biggest fan of Ailey. I don't. So this match for me was a dud,
right.
And I'm sure it was for a lot of people. At least the fans got into it and they started chanting for Hooked on Phonics and Reading Rainbow.
That's fair.
But the match was not good, and it fell apart in certain points. Their timing was off on stuff. It was just and then next was the Nakazawa match versus Alex Jabali, who is the CEO of CEO.
Yeah.
Which
and that just ended up being sort of like a light hardcore match, right?
Yeah, it was supposed to be hardcore, but I mean they used tables, whatever, but most of the hardcore stuff was they had a GameCube controller that they wrapped around Jabali's neck, and then Nakazawa was pretending like he was playing on it while he's pulling on the cord, choking him. But Jabali doesn't know how to sell being choked, so he's just like, laying there, and it's like, okay,
yeah, I mean, it's good that was just relegated to the pre-show.
Yeah, and then they pulled out a game controller because he runs CEO, which is some sort of like cyber esports
organization.
Orlando, I think.
Yeah.
I think it stands for Orlando because that's where he's based. But so they pulled out this big game controller thing and they're beating each other with it and whatever. And so like it was mostly for joke, but nobody really explained why.
Yeah.
They mentioned at one point, well, there's a gaming convention next door, and then we've got this show here. But they didn't explain like how they were connected. They just assumed that you've been watching their YouTube channel or their Instagram, which is the same mistake WWE makes.
Right.
So instead of explaining it, it's just like, okay, well, here's this guy who can't wrestle with somebody who can, and they're having this random match.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was just kind of dumb. So then Jim Ross comes out. The show transitions from the pre-show to the actual show. And so that's when everybody jumped over to BR Live. And it did buffer like right then. Like right when it jumped, you could just tell that all of these people were jumping over because it started to slow down and have some problems. But then it came out of it. It was just for a minute. Delvis78 wants to know, why are there no wrestlers with fanboy / comic book gimmicks? Actually, we have kind of seen that a little bit with Hurricane. He was a comic book character. That was the idea. But yeah, well, you don't see a guy. Well, I guess guys who normally collect comic books look like me, and those are not people who wrestle. But the bigger issue is that if they're going to come out with comic books, if you're a comic book collector and you're coming out with comic books, you don't want them getting wrinkled or damaged or anything. So the best you could do is bring out one that's slabbed, that's graded, like a 9.0, like you're showing it off, but then you beat somebody with it because it's in a hard shell.
It would definitely have to be like a manager.
Yeah, like I could walk out. Like I've got one right here. Like I've got these cases that I put comics in that are.
What is it with you? What is it with you and Joe? It's like, well, speaking of that, and then they just reach off screen. I actually happen to have one right here.
Yeah, well, because I used to have these hanging up. Actually, the two I have sitting here. This is the first comic book I ever received as a child. This issue of Flash. I was 2 years old, and there was a drugstore right next to my daycare center, and they still had a soda fountain, an old school soda fountain, where they put in the seltzer water and then put in the flavor and mix it. Yeah. And then they had racks of comic books. So at the end of every school year, we would get a Coke and a comic, as my mom would say. So we could pick a comic off the rack and grab a soda from the soda fountain. So this is the first comic I ever got from 1978. And you can see how terribly beat up, and there's like tape on the edges and everything like that. But yeah, this is the first comic I got.
That's awesome.
So I actually had those hanging up at one point, and we kind of did some redecorating, so I got to find new space for them.
Basically, your wife was like, we can't have this here anymore. Oh, okay.
But as far as Delvis goes, he wants to know why someone doesn't come out with a Captain America shield or a Thor hammer, and that's because those are copyrighted by Marvel.
Well,
I
guess you get like the special attires like Mania and stuff that pay tribute to that. I know Johnny Gargano does that a lot with takeovers. He'll make his attire look like
and you had
Iron Man.
You had Seth Rollins came out to WrestleMania one year, and he was wearing a Tron suit, and it looked like the Tron Legacy suit with the circles and the grid lines on it. Whatever. So that does happen from time to time, but a lot of that stuff, you couldn't do it unless you work out a merchandising gimmick licensing deal with those companies. And even then, you run into all sorts of issues that WWE has run into over the years where it's like, yeah, we did a promotion with these people, but now if we want to put it on DVD and sell it, or Blu-ray and sell it as part of a package or whatever, then we have to contact whoever has the rights to RoboCop to put WCW RoboCop. Bad example, but I mean that's just basically how it works. So that's why music gets changed on a lot of the WWE releases. You go back now and you watch a WrestleMania or you watch an ECW show.
There's no Limp Bizkit, man.
There's no Enter Sandman being played anymore,
which defeats the entire purpose of that entrance. I'm sorry, like you can't just throw generic music over top of that. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as there are guys though that do come out with stuff that is reminiscent of whatever that looks kind of like it. It's kind of like when you go to a party supply store and they don't have like a Terminator mask, but they do have robot cyborg assassin mask, right? Which is like almost exactly the same thing, except maybe the eyeballs look like regular eyes inside a robot skull, and maybe there's some, flesh on the side. But I mean, otherwise it's like, yeah, that's Terminator, but it's their knockoff. Or they have a Space Raccoon Man instead of Rocket Raccoon. You run into that kind of stuff. They could do some of that kind of stuff, but even then, if you're a big enough company and you do that, you might get some nasty letters from a legal place, and you don't want to mess with that. And it's just not worth it in the hassle for the long run. So the people just wearing the attire, what's her face, Alexa Bliss, she had a Freddy Krueger style sweater. She came out with a glove with knives on it that was Freddy Krueger styled, but she wasn't actually Freddy Krueger. She wasn't actually a Nightmare on Elm Street licensed because of all those issues you have to deal with.
Yeah, that was pretty hot.
Is that for you?
I got like choked on my water.
All right. So the show opened with Seema versus Christopher Daniels. Christopher Daniels, they actually brought up the fact that Christopher Daniels and Curry Man have never been seen in the same place at the same time, which I thought was kind of an interesting thing to bring up.
Well, I felt like that's a lead up into having Curry Man. Maybe that'll be like the new thing.
Right. Which I'm fine with, because that's from Kinnikuman, which is known as Muscle or Ultimate Muscle here in the United States. And anytime that gets thrown into real professional wrestling, like with Samoa Joe's finisher, like I'm all for it. Like, awesome, let's bring that on. So if they want to bring back Curry Man, I'm all for it.
I think one thing I want to say too before we move on to the rest of the card, I think the thing that I really enjoyed the most about this show is the announce team made it a point to give you backstory on some of these people that you don't even know, but also play into the story that they're trying to tell. Like, it's basic pro wrestling, but I'm like, that was just refreshing to hear them go through all the steps of like, oh, well, this, and such, and this is what, blah, blah, blah. Like when we get into the Cody Rhodes match, the aftermath of that, when we get to that, they made it a point to explain this is why this probably happened and blah, 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 and lead up to there. They did a really good job of telling the story as it was happening in the ring.
One other thing I'll say about this match is that I kind of expected Christopher Daniels to go over because he is more well-known with the United States audience. And he actually jobbed. Which on the one, like, it kind of surprised me just from the fact that, oh, you're going to have the guy people recognize lose. That's kind of weird. But Christopher Daniels, I've actually met him a number of times. Great guy. He's probably the guy who said, no, I should lose. Let's get this guy over, So he's a super nice guy. If you've ever get a chance to meet him, he does go to a lot of comic book shows, actually, because he worked with a company called All Yeah Comics to do a comic. It was him and Kazarian worked together on this comic book. So a lot of times they're there signing autographs and stuff. But I've met him at comic shows. I've seen him at wrestling shows. And he acts like he remembers you. I doubt he actually remembers me at all, but he'll act like he remembers you, So that's always cool. So I'm assuming he's one of these guys where he was like, all job, it's no big deal. That's part of professional wrestling. Right. And that was kind of refreshing to see that on the show because you don't always expect to see that. This next match, I think this was one of the worst. They did a triple threat. It was Riho, Nyla Rose, and Yuka Sakazaki.
Yep. You got it.
And it had some big spots, and there were a couple spots where even my wife was like, "Oh, that was a cool spot," but the problem was the overall match got really rough in a couple spots where they didn't time things just right. Someone would go to pick somebody up, and the person was ready to drop, and they would kind of fall over, and it looked kind of bad. Nyla Rose tried to do some flip at one point, and it looked like balance got thrown off, and it hit weird, and it was some real problems. But there were some spots that were pretty good in there, but they kind of need to stop with these. They did the same thing at Double or Nothing where they did it as a triple threat with the women. And I don't know if it's just to get more people on there or if they think with a triple threat they can, take turns moving in and out so that they can get a rest and they can recoup and whatever. But yeah, I just don't think these things will work.
Yeah, I think communication-wise it would work best if there were less people in there. I understand trying to get as many people on the card as you want, but I think in terms, because I don't know the experience level of any of those three competitors. I mean, I could probably click on someone here and kind of get a general idea, like with Nyla Rose, 2012. So wrestling a little bit, but you got to think too, this is kind of their first real exposure being on a grander stage, having more eyes on you. Nerves probably play a part, but I would say in terms of that, definitely cut it down to singles matches. I think it would help with the communication because triple threats are always going to be sort of hard anyway because you do have to have that one person that's sort of just like laying off to the side for a little bit until it's time for them to come back in. And it's easy for that kind of match to just fall off the rails.
Yeah. Although I will say, interestingly enough, my wife goes, "Oh, they have a woman referee for the women's match."
Yeah.
And I hadn't even noticed. I was like, "Oh, yeah, that is a woman." Like I hadn't even
some people have dubbed her Girl Hebner.
But the funny thing was she appeared in other matches later on in the night. So she wasn't just for the women's match. No. She is just a female referee.
Yeah.
Which
is always cool to have, and she actually does a really, really good job.
Yeah. But it was kind of weird because my wife's like, "Oh, they have a female referee," and I was like, "Oh, well, yeah, they do." I had no idea.
Well, and then she's definitely doing her job because referees aren't supposed to really take away from what's going on in the ring.
Exactly. Oh, and that was another problem with this three-way is that there was a lot of talking going on that you could very easily catch.
Yep.
Because of the communication issues that were going on there. All right. Next up, we had Kip Sabian came down ringside to do some commentary because he's going to face at the next show, which is called
Fight for the Fallen.
Fight for the Fallen. Thank you. He's going to fight whoever wins this particular match. So we got MJF, who's one of my favorites on Major League Wrestling.
He quickly became one of my favorites.
We have Jimmy Havoc. We had Jungle Boy, the son of the late Luke Perry, who came out with his bodyguard, the Luchasaurus, who he rides
I love it.
Just like Moon Boy and Devil Dinosaur. I thought that was great. There's another comic reference for you. And then Hangman Page. And Hangman Page, the video started to play, and my wife goes, "Is he a cowboy?" And I'm like, "Yes." And sure enough, here he comes running out. And he's got like the vest. the black vest on and the pants that look almost like chaps, and like, yep, he's the cowboy. He used to come out, I thought, with a noose around his neck.
Yeah, I'm sure they're probably
got rid of that. That might trigger people who killed themselves. I don't think they're watching, but oh well.
Yeah, Brian could go a variety of ways.
So anyway, this was great.
Mm-hmm.
This match was a lot of fun. This was just wall-to-wall action.
Yep.
Like, there was almost no downtime in this match at all. They had something going on anytime, inside the ring, outside the ring. It just kept going and moving and flying.
Well, the match was only 10 minutes long, so I would hope that they were blasting through everything.
And Hangman Page is someone I've actually talked to several people, again, comments on Facebook, whatever, and people are like, I've always heard of Hangman Page, but I've never seen him in anything. And for a lot of people, this was their first chance to actually see someone that they've heard about. The same way with Daniel Bryan, when he was on NXT, that was the first time a lot of them had seen him, even though they'd heard of Bryan Danielson for years in the indies. This was the first time that they were able to see him, and he looked good. Like, he looks every part the superstar he needs to be. In fact, there was no real point at this match where I felt like this fell apart. Unlike the 3-way earlier, this 4-way, I just thought it worked. Like, all of these people knew where they were supposed to be, what they were doing. Everything snapped into place. The action kept moving. It was good. It was really good.
The way I'm looking at it too is they're going to have Fight for the Fallen, and then they're going to have All Out in August, and then that's where they're going to crown the champion, because Adam Page is going to go against Jericho, the championship.
Right.
I see Jericho winning that, just because they might want to go into TV having like, oh, here's Chris Jericho, the champion, but eventually have Page win the title, and then I want to see MJF up there at the top of the card, because dude cuts a hell of a promo, like, and he has that Bubba Ray ECW style, like, heat magnet. He goes out there, he's going to start talking. People are instantly going to hate him.
Yeah, like, he cut a promo before this match that was tremendous. That I forget what the line was.
I know there's the one where he's like, "Yeah, I like video games too, and then I lost my virginity."
Yeah, that's what it was.
And then it pans to that one dude who's just like sitting there in the crowd, like stone faced. It's a good transition.
You're just like you could just see, like, he was going, "All right, I was entertained, but now you've gone too far." Like,
it was almost like that dude was planted in the crowd specifically for that moment.
Although they cut to the crowd at several times during the night when a big move would happen, and I'd be sitting there at home, something would happen, I'd be like, oh, like, I couldn't, like, I think especially during the Jon Moxley match, and where you're just like, and they cut to somebody in the crowd and they're doing the exact same face. And they're just, they're like, oh my gosh. And so the crowd, this was the perfect crowd for them to have.
Yes.
This crowd was tremendous. And this is Orlando. This is Florida. These are people who are used to seeing WCW tapings and Impact tapings. And, they're used to a lot of wrestling, a lot of it not very good. So they got a good show here. But anyway, of course, Hangman Page won because he's skyrocketing.
Yeah, you got to make him look strong going into that match.
But MJF and Jungle Boy had a lot of time where they worked together, so I think there's probably going to be something more with the two of them going forward, which is, I'm fine with that. That's good.
Absolutely.
Let's see. So next we have Cody. He had his match with Darby Allin, and they announced that it had a 20-minute time limit. And I'm like, oh, yeah, they've been announcing those time limits. Then as the match went on, you heard this match
has 10 minutes remaining.
Yeah, and you're like, that's kind of weird. And then, like, 5 minutes remaining. I'm like, I don't remember hearing time cues in the other matches. I bet this one is going to go right down to the wire or go to a draw. And, of course, it ended up going to a draw.
Which was refreshing, and it was actually cool, and the way that they went, where she went to count and how it ended, like, to me, it was perfect. It makes Darby Allin look strong because it's like
this was his debut on the grand stage.
Yeah.
And so they didn't bury him. He didn't have to lose. Cody didn't have to lose.
Exactly.
They both come out of it looking strong, looking like, you know, top contenders going forward. So that was what that
and it played into Darby Allin's character that commentary pushed and pushed. Like, he has no fear. He'll do what it takes, and you can see that. And I like the pace of the match. I like how it started out slow, started to build, and then kind of went into a panic like further on it went with the time limit and everything. It made theirs seem like they were genuine stakes, and there's like no titles or nothing. It's just these guys having a match. And that spot, I don't know, I think they called it like the coffin drop or whatever, where he like went up there and dove off to try to hit Cody on the side and just like bounced off of it.
That was one of those moments where I was watching going,
and then the one where Cody threw him through the turnbuckle and he just went in sideways and just like boom, on the floor. I was like, ow.
But okay, so for people who've watched wrestling, but maybe you've never actually been in a ring or you know, worked with a ring.
It's the hardest part of the ring.
The apron around the edge is legitimately the hardest part, because there's two reasons for that. One is because, you know, the middle has some flex, and we've all seen it. And some rings flex more and some are less. Some you hit and they just kind of drop a little bit. Some they hit and it's almost like a trampoline. You've all seen it at wrestling shows.
Right.
So it starts, you know, at the apron with the beams going in. So you have the most flex there in the middle. Everybody understands that. The other thing is the padding that actually sits on top of the wood. Like, there's metal beams, and then there's wood, and then there's padding on top. That padding actually stops right at the edge. So there's a little lip from the metal girders that go along the side that just sticks up just a tiny bit where that padding stops, and that's where they know where to cut it. Now, some promotions you'll see, they'll go an extra 4 or 5 inches and wrap it over the edge and then tie it down real tight. You can see like this curved edge on the side of the ring. Most places don't. They just cut it right there at the edge, so you get this nice clean line where your apron gets tied on. And you can see that on theirs. It did not have that nice curved edge. It cut, like it stopped right there. So he goes up and yeah, the move was called the trust fall. He basically gets up and then he just kind of falls backwards as if he's pushing his back into the guy on the ground. The thing was, Cody rolled out of the way. So he pushed back and he legit hit his back right on the hardest part of the ring. Not quite his spine on where that metal rail is, but it was pretty close. Like, if he had done that match just a little bit wrong, he would have gone home in a wheelchair. I mean, this was legitimately painful. It was painful for me to watch, just knowing the mechanics of what was going into it. I can't imagine how painful it was for him to actually go through it.
Well,
apparently it's something he's done before.
Yeah, but that thud that it made and how he bounced, that was just like, that rough stuff. But the aftermath of this match is
okay. So they go to the time limit. They can't quite get it. The referee counts 1, counts 2, but the time expires before they can count 3.
Right as she's going down for 3, it was perfectly timed.
And so Brandy gets, she's like, you got to give 5 more minutes. You got to go 5 more minutes. You got to give him 5 more minutes. Sean Spears comes running out. He has this chair, and he smacks Cody on the head, unprotected, with this chair. Now, the thing is, the chair was gimmicked to give. So part of the chair, they had actually replaced what would have been the aluminum that you would sit on with a very thin sheet metal. So it's almost like the effect when you see guys do hardcore matches and they pull out like the turkey tin.
Yeah, or like a really terrible cookie sheet.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a cookie sheet, but it's not. Yeah. Like, you can tell it's one of those like really thin tin. Oh, it's almost like a pie pan, but it's
yeah.
They smack them with it, and it crumples really good and whatever. And you just, like, they always do it in the hardcore matches because it's cheap, it's easy, and you're always just kind of like, okay, obviously that doesn't really hurt because it's this really thin metal. Well, they had replaced part of the chair with really thin metal so he could smack him on the head, and it wouldn't actually destroy him. It wouldn't actually give him a concussion, and they hit right up front, so it would just wrap, and everything would be fine. The problem was when they hit, it actually wrapped all the way around, and the edge of the metal sliced open the back of his head.
Yep.
So he hits with the chair and he rips it off, and Brandy is like starting to yell, and she looks at Cody and she just sees the blood gushing out. And Cody has bleached his hair, so his hair is blonde, and you just see this giant red.
Yeah, and then there's just like a puddle of blood on the mat, and I was like,
it looks so bad. And you could tell like that was not a gimmicked cut. Like that was not when they cut the forehead and you get the blood. Like this was a gash that you could see open on the back of his head, and people legitimately started to look worried. Like the referee looked worried. Some of the guys, in production jumped up on there. Like you could tell, like, oh, this is not what.
Which like. Ultimately, Cody is fine, no concussion, and it sets you up perfectly for that feud. And it was kind of jarring to actually see a chair shot to the head, because we haven't really seen that in a long, long time. At least I haven't anyway, because I haven't. Small promotions might be doing it, but because it's regarded now as just a dumb thing to do. But yeah, it sets up that feud perfectly, because they already talked about, it's like, well, Shawn Spears and Cody came up in developmental and OVW, blah blah blah. So it's amazing. And that's the other part. I go back to commentary. They made it a fact after that happened to explain this is why this happened and all the history. And
well, and I wonder how much of that is Jim Ross coming in at that point, because like we said in the pre-show with some of those matches, they didn't give you the history you needed. They didn't tell you the stuff you needed to know about Jabali, CEO, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's probably more of a Jim Ross thing. And I want to say too, I like the chemistry with Jim Ross and Excalibur, and even Golden Boy, who was there. He normally does video game competition commentary, and he held up fine. I thought he did great.
Excalibur is he's phenomenal.
Yes.
I don't know where he came from, but that guy he's the money. He's the perfect guy to be there with Jim Ross. He's the guy who can stand with him to do the show. And it's funny because when Jim Ross comes out, you can see that he's kind of nervous. Mm-hmm. He's trying to be like super respectful. Like he has a lot of admiration for Jim Ross. And his nerves are up like right at the beginning, but then as they ease into it and they move along, he is fantastic.
And Jim Ross sounded great. He sounded like he's not quite back to like his old form, but he's definitely getting there.
Right, Double or Nothing, he got lost a couple times. He was like, I'm not sure what we're doing here. He didn't know where they were, what he was doing. But yeah, this was fun. So again, I give them credit. Cody didn't want to do the thing where you put up your hand and take the chair shot, because everybody they see it and whatever. So they gimmicked the chair. They tried something different. Didn't work the way they expected, but at least they tried. They tried to do something safe. They had a stunt chair. They meant it, with all the best of intentions. It just didn't work out.
But now it's going to play into what should be a really great feud.
Yeah. And we got to see MJF again. MJF and show up 5 minutes late after everyone else is there, and then he's trying to dig through everybody. Cody, I like his, and you see it on the Being the Elite YouTube show. They've done this a lot, where Cody will be in the room with MJF, and someone else will be there, and he'll be like, "Yeah, this is great," and then Cody's like, "Hey, I'll be right back. I got to go do something." And as soon as they leave, MJF just starts like talking really terrible to whoever else is in. It's funny. I hope that transitions to TV as well. Those will make for some good backstage segments. All right, so now we got the final official match of the show, which was Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks versus the Laredo Kid and the Lucha Brothers. Which, if you've ever seen Lucha Underground, that's where these guys come from. Pentagon Jr. and those guys. Again, fantastic talents.
Yes.
Great talent for them to get. Lucha Underground was a really fun show.
I still need to watch it. Is this still on Netflix?
I don't know. I don't have Netflix anymore. I'll
look into it. I need to watch it.
But so of course, Kenny Omega, Young Bucks, they don't have their gear, right? So they have to do whatever kind of crazy entrance. So they start playing this music, and you can see people in the crowd. They're like, I kind of recognize this music, but I don't, like, what is this thing? And then the Young Bucks come out and they're dressed as Ken and Ryu from Street Fighter. And then everybody's like, oh, that's the Street Fighter music. They're playing like, the way WCW would take Smells Like Teen Spirit and turn it into Self High Five for DDP. They had done that with Street Fighter music, but turned it into like this Young Bucks intro thing. Ties in with the video game stuff with CEO, whatever. But it was fun to see them come out and they're dressed and they're, doing their moves and the fireball and whatever. And then this guy comes running out of the crowd.
Does the Batista entrance.
He's doing the Batista machine guns and the slap for the pyro and everything. Lights go out. And then, like, you could hear the crowd, like, kind of confused. Like, who is that guy and what's going on? And then I guess they could see the silhouette of Kenny Omega coming out on the stage, whereas we at home just saw black.
Yeah.
But you heard, like, this gasp almost from the crowd where they're like, oh, like things started to click on what was happening because the lights come on. Kenny Omega standing there with his back turned. He's got the Akuma sigil on his back. He's got the hair up in the bun, and he's standing, and that guy is like laying on the ground behind him, and they're doing, the Street Fighter pose, and everybody just freaks out for this. It was, 100,000. You could have had 100,000 people in that arena from what it sounded like with the way people erupted over that entry. It was amazing.
Yeah. It's nice that they just can do fun stuff like that. I look forward to them doing that more often.
And that was something that I also commented on with my wife. I was like, you wouldn't see this in WWE because that is, especially not in the main event, because that is just silly enough that you almost wonder, should we do that? Because it is kind of a goofy thing to do, especially with the guy running out and whatever. But at the same time, it fits their whole thing. They needed fresh gear for the show. There's a video game tournament, so they got something that plays along with it. They came up with this entrance that makes all this stuff work, gives it a reason for being there. It was just a lot of fun. And that's one of the things that you're seeing in AEW that you don't see in WWE is fun. Like guys enjoying themselves. That's why I like to go to house shows, because you see the guys enjoying themselves. They're being told most of the time. Now, sometimes at the main events, it's different because they're doing the match on the road to get everything in place before they do it live on TV. But a lot of times it's like, you're going out there, you got 12 minutes, do whatever. And, we saw the last show I did, it was Sin Cara and Andrade. And they just gave him 12 minutes and apparently told him just do whatever you want. And it was a fantastic, phenomenal match. And it was one of those matches where they played with the crowd. They actually jumped the guardrail at one point, and Andrade was like threatening a fan, and like fun stuff like that you don't get, on your regular TV show matches. So that type of stuff is in the main event of AEW. That's a good time.
Yeah,
that's a lot of fun. So the match, it was supposed to be a 6-man tag. So the idea was supposed to be you had to tag in, tag out. So there's only 2 guys out of the 6 at any given time wrestling. And that, like, within the first minute, they threw that out the window. And everyone just started brawling. And they went on, I don't even remember, I think it was like almost 20 minutes that they went. I think they had a 20-minute limit, and they went, just under the limit. But again, nonstop the entire time. Move after move after move after move of setting something up and setting something else up and setting this up and doing this big thing and doing this, 4 guys doing this move and 2 guys doing this thing over here. And then this guy jumps over and gets involved, and just crazy nonstop action back and forth the entire time. This was easily, one of the best matches of the year, just in terms of how much fun and action. And this is one of those matches like you remember at the end of the year. This will be one of those. It's like, oh yeah, remember that time they came out as the Street Fighter guys? That was a really fun match. Like that's what this was. This was super, super fun.
And I mean, the Bucks and the Lucha Bros have been having matches these last few months between like here in the States and then going back to Mexico and then back again. The chemistry is just off the charts. And Kenny Omega is just one of those talents that you've seen it in the matches that he's had with Okada and everything, like just universally praised as being a good worker, but he can also not take himself seriously either and do the fun, silly things. And that's,
yeah, it's weird. It's almost like they put the idea of being entertaining first and foremost in their mind before they go out there.
Yeah.
Huh. Who would have known that was good to watch? That's crazy.
Yeah. It's like if you're entertaining out there for the crowd and the crowd's really into it and it transitions well enough through the screen to us, it just enhances the experience.
So, of course, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks won.
Yeah.
So they stood triumphant at the end. But, man, that was a good match. I really enjoyed that a lot. So then Justin Roberts gets in the ring and he goes, that concludes the official portion of tonight's show. The lights will be turning off. And you hear people in the crowd, they're like, what? What's he talking about? He goes, but when the lights come back on, there will be an unsanctioned match between Jon Moxley and Joey Janela. And, whatever his announcement was. And then people understood, they're taking this seriously. You always hear WWE, this is an unsanctioned match between Triple H and Batista, whatever, but it's just a match in the middle of the card and whatever. This was unsanctioned, so it's at the end. He announces it's going to be the end of the show. The lights are going to turn off, and then they turn back on, and you get this other match, which was really interesting to think of the next level of doing an unsanctioned match, as opposed to just saying, hey, if something bad goes wrong, we're not responsible. This was their way of actually, again, visually putting something together to say, here's a break, because that's what this is in storyline. And again, that's so refreshing.
Yeah, I think the last time that there was anything sort of similar to that is when Bret Hart and DDP had a match for the United States Championship at the end of Fall Brawl 98.
Yeah, how many years ago was that?
21.
Yeah. So it's almost like the guys in AEW pay attention to actual professional wrestling.
Well, it's almost like think about it too. The ages of most of these guys, and either when they got into the business or when they were young and impressionable and grew up with it, was around the same time frame that we both did. So some of these guys that are even younger than me were a little bit younger at the height of WCW in the Attitude Era. So that was it stuck in their minds. And to see, and you got to think, Cody's dad, the late great Dusty Rhodes, he's taking a lot. He's like, we have to do something different. Here's all these ideas. And this is just the start of it. I feel going forward, it's going to be nothing but refreshing. Everything's going to feel new and great. And I hope that they don't want to find themselves sticking to one certain pattern and they keep changing it up. They actually listen. It's like, all right, well, this guy's getting over. He's starting to get cheered. Maybe we should do something where he comes and helps somebody and transition him into a baby face, or let's turn this guy heel. I hope that will be the case. I think that it will. Because ultimately, you have to listen to your fan base. You can't just ignore them for so long. Otherwise, case in point, WWE, people are just like, all right, that's it. I'm throwing my ring out the car door. I'm done.
Because if the fans are getting something over, you have to follow the fans, not your plans. And follow the fans, not your plans. That's something that we've used putting together wrestling shows as long as I've been doing them. It's one of those things that you have to get into your head that and we tell this to the guys who are wrestling, even when you're doing a match, if you start doing something and the crowd's not into it and you're going for 5 or 6 minutes and no one's reacting, change it up.
Right.
Do something different. like get the crowd back into it somehow. You got to work them back into it. You can't just say, well, this is what we have planned out. That's what we have to do. And that's the WWE style. And you can see where it's gotten them now. Being able to listen and react and adapt is what is going to take any promotion to the next level in the future. So anyway, we got the unsanctioned match. Jon Moxley, Joey Janela. They actually did talk about the fact that these two guys, they both wanted to fight. They both, they just didn't care. They were going to go out there and do whatever it takes to win because they just wanted to go out there and just beat the crap out of somebody. And the two of them, managed to find each other. They did a lot of stuff with barbed wire, which you don't normally see. Mm-hmm. They did stuff with thumbtacks.
Yep.
Just a lot of stuff. And some of the stuff, like you could see the barbed wire, for instance, it was real barbs in the sense that you had the metal twisted around the metal on the line, but they weren't sharp barbs. So you could see, like when they would do some of the close-ups, that it wasn't razor cut. Like it wasn't to a fine point. It wasn't to a very thin edge. It was thick. It was more about keeping the cows in the pasture, as opposed to stopping the East Germans from escaping to West Germany, type of barbed wire. But having said that, though, they weren't afraid to use it. So they had it on the chair and smacked each other with it. They had a board with some of it, on there. They would fall into it and then pick it up and throw it on the guy and then stomp on the back of it. So when they pulled it off, you could see marks. Like they had puncture holes. There were spots where they were bleeding from it, even though it wasn't as bad as maybe what we've seen from FMW in Japan or Puerto Rico, where they use the real scary barbed wire where they smack somebody with it and they just cut gashes into it.
Yeah.
It's not Madman Pondo. We're not watching any of that type of here.
Between like him and Abdullah the Butcher and people, oh man. Some of that stuff is hard to like go back and watch.
Yeah. Like at the time, when I was 21.
Yeah. Blood and guts. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, that's all. They just threw him onto dry ice. They just threw him onto dry ice and he lost a layer of flesh when they peeled him off. That's so awesome. And then now I'm watching that and I'm like, oh, who are these people?
But Moxley was having fun.
Yeah.
He was enjoying
it. They had they even had somebody's fake leg, prosthetic leg, got into the fight somehow.
Yeah.
And at one point, Moxley like lifts up the apron and he goes to pull like a table or something out from underneath. And there was another gamer joystick sitting there from the match at the pre-show. Like apparently they had put several of them underneath because the guy couldn't remember what side of the ring to jump out and pull it out from. So they had multiples. So if he went to the wrong side, like, oh, well, there's one there anyway, so it was still there at the end of the show. That was kind of funny. But they did all sorts of, stuff. And like the thumbtacks, pour the thumbtacks over the ring. They tease going into it. They don't go into it. They tease going into it. They don't go into it. And then finally he pulls off Janela's boots, takes off his shoes, takes off his socks, picks him up, and then drops him foot first onto the thumbtacks. And he's, falls down, rolls around in it, whatever. And then
a good shot of the thumbtacks just bunched up, sticking into his heel.
Yeah. And so my wife's like, how can they do that? But the thing is, like thumbtacks don't feel good, but, I've taken a thumbtack before, taken, a couple in the back. And when they hit your back, it's like you get a little bit of a stinger right when they hit, because something is making contact with you.
Yeah.
But then it's immediately gone. Like you don't feel it. It's immediately gone and you're not gushing blood from it or anything. You might get a couple drops of blood trickling from one or two of them. But for the most part, you take it, it stings for a second, and it's gone.
Yeah.
And you don't even notice it again. Now, I don't know about taking them in the feet. That might be a little different.
Yeah, that'd probably feel different, I would imagine.
But yeah, taking them in the back and whatever. Not that big of a deal, but still not. It's still not something I would choose to do if I had the choice of doing that. But sometimes your mouth gets ahead of you and you agree to do things in a live show that maybe you shouldn't have. But anyway, they do all of that stuff. They had a second bag of thumbtacks that they brought out. It was, I don't know, it was weird, the way that they kept, that was another thing too, is they kept going bigger. Because a lot of times in hardcore matches, it's just, I'm going to pull something out and hit you with it. Now I'm going to pull out something else. I'm going to hit you with it. Now I'm going to pull out something else. And this was, I'm going to hit you with, something that's hard metal. Now it's something hard metal with barbed wire. Now I've got a whole bunch of barbed wire on a board I'm going to throw you into. Now I'm going to pick up the board, throw it on you, and smash myself on top of it so it hits you more. Now I'm, pulling out the thumbtacks. Now I'm taking off your shoes and throwing you in the thumbtacks. Now I'm throwing a second bag of thumbtacks. Like, it just kept, like, it actually built, which is
there was a psychology to it. How about that?
Yeah, it was weird. And boy, was the crowd was into this. Again, being in a 9,000 seat arena, you wouldn't know. This very easily could have been a WrestleMania crowd. This could have been downtown Chicago. This could have been Madison Square Garden. I mean,
what a moment.
This was, everybody was in.
What a moment. Did you see that moment? Wow, this is a moment. I'm glad we didn't get any of that either on commentary. They just let the action speak for itself and filled in the blanks along the way.
And I guess the other thing was, if you're not into hardcore matches, like, my wife actually left. Like, she was like, I can't watch any more of this. So, I understand.
Yeah.
But even if you're a wrestling fan who doesn't like hardcore matches, I think 9 times out of 10, what you don't like about hardcore matches is how brainless it is.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this one, because it had psychology, because it had a story, because it was building momentum as the match went along, I think even if you're not a fan of hardcore, you can at least say that was a good hardcore match.
Yeah.
Because they did think it through. They did work it the right way. It was structured. It made sense, as opposed to, here's just 2 guys and a bunch of gimmicks, go out there and beat the crap out of each other.
Yeah. It was no New Jack match.
No, it was not. No underage children were harmed in the making of this match.
Oh, yeah. God.
So anyway, let's see. Moxley won. Because of course he did, because he's being, pushed to the moon, which, makes sense. I'm not saying anything about that, but of course he did win, which brings out Kenny Omega, because at the end of Double or Nothing, Moxley came out to make his debut and attacked Omega, and they fought all over. So now Omega grabs Moxley and starts taking him around the arena and beating him. And of course, some of the jokes from Fyter Fest being this failure start to play into this final moment here, where they have the pool, which, they were told it was going to be like this luxury spa pool, whatever, and it's just like a blow-up pool from Walgreens with some floaties in it. So, they're dunking each other and, trying to drown each other in the pool, whatever. Then they go over to where the band was supposed to play, where Blink 182, as the roadie said, was going to be performing, and he's, throws him on the stage, throws him into the drums, grabs the drumsticks, is trying, almost like nunchucks, hitting him with the drumsticks, which looked a little weak, but, it's whatever. And then he grabs the guitar, and he's, hitting him with the guitar and pretending to play, and throws it on the ground and stomps off. So Omega gets his back on Moxley, which of course will set them up for even more fun in the future. Oh, and the funniest thing was, this was great. I don't know if you caught this, but Omega leaves, and there's officials, referee, whatever, come over and they help Moxley up. And they're helping him backstage, and the camera guy is tracking them, and he trips and he falls into the pool, and he has enough of a frame of mind to like lift the camera up so the camera doesn't fall in the water. You can see like part of his leg come up in front of the camera, and Moxley sees him fall and just starts laughing. Like, he can't help himself. And so then they try in commentary, they're trying like, he is so sadistic. He's laughing at the pain that he's just gone through. He's laughing about all the blood spilled tonight. But no, it's like the camera guy fell into the pool. And so then like they go past him and they cut to a different camera, and the guy like lifts himself up, and then he goes running up on the stage to get back in front of them to get some of the final shots of the night. But yeah, he just like, it broke Jon Moxley. Like, after the hardcore match, after the fight with Kenny Omega, then the cameraman just falls backwards into the pool, and Moxley just busts out laughing. He cannot contain himself.
Good stuff. I don't know if this happened or not, but I saw someone put a caption with like Moxley laying there on the ground that had quotes in it that said, "Enjoy fighting Corbin, Seth." Did he actually like say that at all? That was caught on camera, or was someone just kind of messing around? And
I think that's someone messing
Okay.
around. I don't think so. But
refreshing show, refreshing products. I look
So
forward to.
overall, I don't think the show was as good as Double or Nothing. Where I think Double or Nothing, it had more matches, and the more matches were built up better. You didn't have the Jabali stuff going on, whatever. But the stuff that they had here that was good was so intensely good. Again, with the hardcore match, rethinking a hardcore match in 2019, rethinking how they do the tie-in with it being Fighter Fest and with it being with the video game convention and having the video game entrance and playing all of that up. Like, so much stuff that went into this was so intense and so well thought out and well planned and made sense. It was just so good to see a show like this in 2019.
We got Fight for the Fallen here in a couple weeks. I think it's like the 13th, which oddly enough, the WWE Network is going to stream Evolve's 10th year anniversary show on the same day.
Yep.
So it's already starting. You can tell that they're wanting to try to undermine it, but I don't think they'll be able to. I think this is going to be a revolution that they're not going to be able to stop for a while, if ever.
So on the 13th, I'm actually traveling down to Southern Illinois. I have to do a wedding, and then I'm going to Southern Illinois because I'm going to camp. I'm going back to camp all that next week. So I'm hoping that when I get to the hotel, it has good enough Wi-Fi that I can stream the show Saturday night before I have to go out to camp. Otherwise, I'm going to be stuck for a whole week, unable to watch the show until I get back on the 20th. So, crossing fingers that the hotel has good Wi-Fi.
We shall see. Because we got extreme rules on the 14th. So
yeah, I'm not that worried on that one.
Yeah,
I can wait a week on that one. But no, okay. So one last thing before we go though. You were talking earlier about how you need to watch Major League Wrestling.
Yes.
Major League Wrestling normally does a show. I think it's 9 p.m. Friday nights. They are doing what they often do is they go and film live events. So they go Chicago, they go Milwaukee, they go wherever. They LA. They were in LA last time. They do these shows where they show it live, but then they film other stuff that gets cut up and put into the weekly show later on. That's the way they film stuff. So they film for 5 hours or 4 hours, whatever, and they'll give you 2 hours live as a special live event, and then the other 2 hours get cut up and put into the programming of the weekly show. So this weekend is actually their next live show. So if you want to watch Major League Wrestling, if you want to try it out, and I fully suggest that you check out this show, because like I said, it is my favorite weekly wrestling show. And this is not a sponsorship. I'm not getting any sort of kickback for this. I'm not giving you a link with our initials so that we get something out of this. I'm doing this for your benefit. You can go to Sling TV or sling.com, whatever. Get their World Sports Package. The World Sports Package is $10 a month, or it's $5 a month if you buy it, I think, as a year. So you pay for the entire year in advance. It only costs you $5 a month. You sign up for it, but you get it free for 7 days. And then after 7 days, you can cancel if you don't want to keep it, or you can keep it. With that, international sports, that's the cheapest way I've found to get beIN Sports if it's not part of the package you already have. For most people, it's not. So if you get it, sign up for it. Sign up for it on Friday. You can watch their Friday night TV show. And then Saturday, they're doing the Kings of the Coliseum. It's in Chicago. And again, I wish I could go. I just, can't make it work out with everything else I've got going on this month. But it's going to be at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific on Saturday. And so you're going to get the live event streaming on beIN Sports And like I said, Major League Wrestling has become my favorite of the weekly shows to watch. I never miss a show. In fact, I have Sling. I have the World Sports Package. I DVR it. I watch it every week. I love it. I love the show. You get guys like MJF. He's one of the regulars on there. You get Teddy Hart. You get Davey Jr. You're going to get Contra Unit, which includes Jacob Fatu.
Okay, yeah. I've heard that name thrown around a lot. Apparently, he's a hot commodity that everybody wants to sign.
Yeah, Simon Gotch is on there. Filthy Tom Lawler, who used to do MMA and transitioned to professional wrestling.
Yeah.
He's the champion on there right now. You get Low Key. You get Jim Cornette is the play-by-play announcer.
Yeah,
actually, he's color commentary, I guess.
Yeah.
He's color, not play-by-play. But yeah, so he's actually, I guess, bought into Major League Wrestling. Like, he's not just a hired. Apparently, he watched some of the product and said, "I want to get in on this." And so it used to be Tony Schiavone. They hired Tony Schiavone, and then Jim Cornette said, "I want to get in on this." And they said, "Thank you, Tony. It was fun." Now we've got Jim Cornette. So it's like I said, it's a fantastic promotion. Some of the talent is crossover with AEW. So you'll see some of the same people there, but it is great. And like I said, you can go to sling.com, find the World Sports Package, sign up for it. You get it free for a few days. You can check it out. If you don't like it, cancel, you pay nothing. I'm not going to say, go to sling.com/TCP and then we get 5%, if you sign up.
I was waiting for you to just mute your mic and just be like,
I'm not trying to make money off of this. I'm not trying to monetize you guys following the show. It is just a great thing. It's a great product. It's a great show. I think you guys will really enjoy it, especially if you're watching. If you're so into wrestling, you're watching this show, then you're probably going to enjoy Major League. And Delta78 says, "Isn't Low Key a bit of a prick?"
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never met him personally, so I don't know. But from what I've gathered in all the places that he's been in, someone's like, yeah, he's a bit of a dick.
He's, from what I understand, and he's someone I've never met personally, but from what I understand, he takes it very seriously, and almost to, not quite to Shawn Michaels 1999 seriously, but he takes it seriously. Wins mean something to him, losses mean something to him, how he's portrayed on screen means something to him.
I'm sure Lay Cool being his coaches on that season NXT was fantastic for him.
Right. So that's where he gets into a lot of problems, is that he wants to be a professional wrestler. And it gets him into a lot of issues with people where it's like, okay, bro, you need to chill. You're working for somebody else. It's somebody else's promotion. You got to roll with it. You got to take some losses, whatever. Whereas he always wants to win, always wants to look good, always wants to be, which, I mean, you get that from some people. The problem is he's a great talent. You watch Low Key wrestle matches and you're like, he is really good, so you can't let egos get too incredibly big, but he's definitely a talent that I like to see wrestle. But anyway, Delta78, he says that MLW is the only wrestling show he watches. So yeah, same as me. It's the only one I watch regularly anymore. I might check out Raw on Hulu later just because I heard it was different and want to see some of the stuff that happened there. But yeah, I love the show. You can get the free trial. There's no reason not to. I'm not monetizing you. I'm just letting you know you need to check out the show.
All right.
So, anything else you want to add before we wrap it up today?
Is it October yet? I'm ready for the weekly AEW show. I'm curious because I know they're not doing house shows, but it is going to travel. TV will travel. They will be in different locations. So I'm curious to see how that's going to pan out. Will they be able to sell out the arena week in, week out? How will TV go? How will the ratings be? Like, how's it going to affect everything? I'm ready for October to be here, mostly because it's really hot outside and I'm kind of getting tired of the heat too.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be out in it for a week. And in fact, I don't even know what we're going to do with this show because the week after Fight for the Fallen is the week I'm at camp. So we're going to have to do the show later in the month. So
yeah, We'll figure it out.
Delvis is now adding that no. The only wrestling show he watches regularly is our show.
We appreciate your eyes and ears.
So even though that's a lie, we appreciate that. No, we love everybody that watches the show. Both of you, you're our biggest fans. So anyway, we'll do another show at some point towards the end of the month, I'm sure, to kind of talk about what has happened and what's going forward. Maybe we'll have some good WWE news to talk about at that point. Maybe not. We'll see. But yeah, so I'm hoping. See, here's the thing, and I've heard people say this. It's like, you guys do a lot of complaining about the state of professional wrestling. And it's like, can't you just watch the shows and enjoy it? And it's like, no, I can't just watch the shows and enjoy it when they're bad. It's the same thing that's happening with comic books nowadays. 20 years ago, I was buying 10 comics a week, 15 comics a week. Now I'm buying 3. Maybe 4 if there's something from some indie company I've never heard of before, but the first issue looks interesting, I'll grab it. Otherwise, comics right now are at a WWE point in terms of their creativity and awesomeness. Yeah. So there's a lot of complaining. And the thing is, I don't want to be complaining. I don't want to be the old man bitching about wrestling podcasts. I'd like to come on here and talk about how great everything is. Yeah. It just doesn't happen.
But maybe we are on the cusp of that. WWE seems like they're willing to want to change the stagnation. Is that even the right word to use?
Yeah.
Just the boring, stale product that they've had for the last 10 years.
And I think part of it is now that they're facing Fox and moving to Fox Sports with SmackDown, that changes a lot of the landscape. It changes their thinking. It changes who they answer to. If they go on to Fox Sports and SmackDown tanks because it's the same stale product and nobody cares and the ratings keep going down and down and down, they're going to go from Fox Sports 1 Friday nights at 9 p.m. to Fox Sports 2 Saturdays at 12:35 a.m. Fox Sports is not going to just let them. Or actually, they're doing Fox, aren't they? It's not even Fox.
Yeah. It's just Fox proper.
They'll go from Fox on Friday nights at 9 p.m. to Fox Sports 2 at 12:35 a.m. So, Fox will not be afraid to say, you're not doing what we wanted. You're getting basically shelved for the rest of the contract, over here. So WWE now really has to pay attention to what's going on and really try to, bring the product up. So hopefully they can pull it off. I want to do positive shows. If I was just doing a weekly show talking about MLW, you probably would get a positive show because I love a lot of the stuff on that show. But, I don't want to do a weekly podcast either.
Nope.
So anyway, so hopefully we'll be back sometime at the end of July to do another show. Just so you guys know, the 23rd is my birthday. If you want to send me something, I'm just saying, whatever.
My birthday is in 2 days. So
is it really?
You guys want to?
You're on the 4th?
Yeah, I am indeed.
I didn't know you had a July 4th birthday.
Yeah.
Wow. So you, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Incredible.
We're taking over. It's the new NWO.
The July.
See how that goes.
Yeah. So, well, hey, at least there's no excuse for people not to come to your party, right? They got the day off work.
Oh man, when I was a kid, I talked with this about time. When I was a kid, most people were on vacations and stuff, so it was tough to get people to come to my party.
I guess that is true.
I just don't want people really. And it's like, give me a few close friends and my family, I'll be all right.
Actually, when people are like, oh, you got a birthday coming up, are you doing anything special? I'm usually like, no. Like, I'm probably going to go to Wingstop and eat a bunch of wings and then drink a bunch of beer. Yep. Maybe some tea, go to bed.
Yep. Mine is I'm going to eat a steak and hang out with some friends and drink some beers. And yeah.
Here's one last question before we go. This is from the chat, from Delvis. Do you think the Fox Sports... he says the Fox spot is just a placeholder for another show. We know they're doing a second show with Fox Sports somehow, and I think that's what he's asking.
Is that going to be a recap show or something?
Well, I think because they're going to. The last I remember hearing about this is that because it's going to be on Fox Sports, it's going to be more of a sports-oriented type of program. So it's going to be more about the wins and losses. It's going to be less about the storylines and more about
wins and losses, huh? Where have I heard that? AEW.
It's going to be more about hyping upcoming matches the same way you would on a UFC fight night,
right,
type of thing. And then he wants to know about the XFL. I don't even know if the XFL is.
That's
whatever.
2020, I think, is when
I'm not. I don't watch that. That's the wrong football for me.
Well, that's the other thing about that too is once that really starts ramping up, I think most of Vince's attention is going to be pulled towards that. So,
wait. I think I see what he's saying. He's asking if the Fox Sports show about wrestling as a sport is a placeholder for an XFL show in the future.
Could be. You never know. I don't know.
I want to say no, only because XFL was always a joint WWE NBC venture.
True.
Because it was Dick Ebersol who was head of NBC Sports.
Yeah, but NBC has a play with NFL now, whereas back then they didn't.
They had lost it. Yeah, they lost it to CBS, I think. So that's why they went with XFL.
Yeah, NBC now has like the Sunday night game, so that would probably conflict with that unless the XFL season was going to be like it was before and it was during the off season of NFL. I don't know.
Again, that's the wrong football. This is my football. This is where I'm at. That's the football I watch. So.
I'm a hockey guy, so
yeah. I mean, whatever. If I hope WWE makes $1 billion off of the XFL. I hope it puts the NFL out of business. Sure, why not? I don't really care either way. So, all right. That's gonna wrap it up, guys. We got nothing else to say. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Beefcake sucks.
Oh, come on, he's a Hall of Famer.